Hello everyone, Dr. Demito here. Today's lecture is going to focus on cultural competency and its influences on the provision of care. This is not a new term. As nurses, we have become quite familiar with providing culturally competent care to our patients. But as nurse practitioners, it takes on even greater meaning. And that's what we're going to explore in today's lecture. Okay, let's look at what cultural competence is and how do we achieve it. It's a learning process. Self-awareness is the biggest. It's key. We need to be aware that we come into any situation with something called unconscious bias. And that unconscious bias is reflective of our environment, that we were raised in, our exposure to different types of culture, all sorts of any interactions that we have had from birth on influences our ability to provide culturally competent care to our patients. And we need to be aware that we all have some unconscious bias that we're not aware of. Even those of us who believe that we are 100% culturally competent and we accept everybody for everything, we may come across a situation where that unconscious bias actually rears its head. So this is reflective. We need to, when we are working in situations that are new to us, we need to reflect how we dealt with it and how we were providing care appropriately to our patients. I think the greatest knowledge we have of the different cultures that we encounter increases our capacity to become competent. I am fascinated by culture. I always have been. As a new grad nurse, I would ask patients from different cultures questions about them. Of course, I would always interject that if it was okay to ask them questions because of my own interest. And through the years, I've learned so much and gained appreciation and respect for the different cultures and what they all bring to the table. Cultural competence requires us to adapt to unique backgrounds and cultures that they differ from our own. We may have been raised in a completely different home environment than our patients, and so we need to adapt to that. To become competent, we need to be sensitive to our patients and their heritage, sexual orientation, socioeconomic situation, ethnicity, and cultural background. And as I had said before, we may think, oh my gosh, I am so accepting of people and other cultures, and but you never just quite know. I had a situation in clinic, and we're seeing more of this in the LGBTQ community. I had a patient come in with his mother, and the mother advised me, this was a teenage patient, that the person who presented with a female name identified as male. And I normally don't have any issues, don't skip a beat, but the problem with this was that the patient looked female. The patient was wearing a dress. I can't remember if the patient had makeup on or anything like that, but I know that the patient was wearing a dress and looked female. Well, in my conversation with the mother and the patient, I accidentally said she. I used the wrong pronoun. I felt terrible once I had recognized it. And I said to the patient and mother, I said, oh my gosh, I'm so terribly sorry. I said, I didn't mean to use the wrong pronoun, and they were incredibly understanding and said, "Don't worry about it. We understand that transgenderism is a new construct, but not all patients may potentially be that understanding." So it gave me a pause following the encounter to consider that I needed to be more cognizant of a patient's gender affirmation. And this isn't a situation that I encounter all that frequently, but over the last couple of years, it has increased in frequency. So it's something that we need to become more sensitive to. So, what defines a culture? It's a really broad term, and it encompasses everything: um, ideas and attitudes, the way people relate to each other, their manners of speaking, material products of physical effort, ingenuity, and imagination. So, culture, it truly does encompass the entire being. Um, Includes language, beliefs, etiquette, law, morals, entertainment, education, sets of dynamically evolving shared traits, and an individual can actually belong to more than one cultural group or subgroup. And what's key is that we don't want to stereotypically define someone by their physical characteristics. So, as I had done with the young man, her physical character, or see, I did it again. The physical characteristics were female, but that's not how he felt on the inside. So, we need to consider everything and how it influences behaviors. I've been a nurse for many, many years. I started my career as a bedside nurse in labor and delivery, and I knew that there were certain cultures that after the delivery of a child, they would not ingest anything that was cold. Everything had to be lukewarm or room temperature. So no ice water, which generally people craved after delivery. Nope, it had to be room temperature at the coldest. So I understood that. I also realized that there were some patients who wanted to put certain medallions on the infant to protect them. Other groups wanted to wear binders on. One really interesting one I only had it once in all of my years in women's health. They did not believe in the infant wearing clothing until I think it was day 7 of life. I'd never heard that before, never encountered it again, but and it was winter time, of course, of all things. But we were able to accommodate by swaddling and things like that, just no clothing or diapers either, for that matter. So we were able to accommodate. So that's a matter of understanding and respecting a person's belief system. And I treat everyone as an individual and respect them, their belief systems. They may not mirror my own. And this also, goes with ethics and belief systems and religious views, but I respect their ability to believe the way they do. I may not believe the way they do, but I respect their ability to believe the way that they do. Cultural humility is the recognition of limitations in knowledge and cultural perspectives and being open to new ones. Viewing patients as individuals, reflecting and self-critiquing, and meeting patients where they are. I love to have open dialogue with patients. Of course, I always ask them in the beginning, if I have any questions about their culture, I will ask them, would you mind if I asked you? I want to make sure I'm being respectful. Of course, it has to be the right setting. It's not something you could just blurt out. But I've learned so much about culture just by having conversations with people. And I have, most of the time, I would say that the patients were um, appreciated the fact that I had interest in their belief system, even though I may not share it. Impact of culture, it's huge. It influences the way patients seek medical care and the way clinicians provide care by age, gender, race, ethnic groups, cultural attitudes, regional differences, socioeconomic status. Some cultures, they are very hesitant to seek medical care. They may wait until they're quite ill before they seek medical care. Others may come to the clinic more often than we may potentially think they need. But again, we need to respect their right to seek medical care if they feel that it is necessary. We may have a patient population that's very wealthy. We also may have a patient population that is very in need. And I always talk to my students, and sometimes if they come to a walk-in clinic and they don't have medical insurance, and that visit is going to cost potentially $120, maybe more, and that's not including the cost of medication if they need it, that $120 may have a huge impact on them. It may mean that they can't pay their car payment that month, or it's going to impact their food budget, or maybe the gas bill isn't going to get paid. So when they come to the clinic, that's a huge sacrifice financially on their part, and we need to be respectful and we need to be stewards of that. And in doing so, not ordering unnecessary tests that would inflate the bill. We need to, if they need medication, we need to ensure that this is medication that is going to treat the illness, but it is also inexpensive. I once had a patient who came to clinic, and I said to the patient, I said, "You were just here a couple of days ago." He was coming in for pink eye, and I hadn't seen him. It was someone else. And he said, "I know." He said, "But the person I saw prescribed an eye drop that was $180, and I just can't afford it." Oh my gosh, I said to myself, $180. There are so many other medications that are so much less expensive, or I can go on GoodRx and get a coupon for them. So I ended up finding a prescription for $4 for this person. And he was so pleased that I had taken the time to really see him as a whole patient. The other provider obviously had not seen him as a whole patient. So make sure that you're doing that in your practice. The blurring of cultural distinctions. Cultural differences are malleable in a way that physical characteristics may not be. So when we're looking at someone, we see what we see, but cultural differences, they can be blurred. Now, modern technology has done wonders, I think, for helping, especially with the use of translation lines. Now, we may have had translation lines for a long time. When I first started in nursing, we had nothing. We used people who worked in the hospital, but we know that's not the best. Then the translation lines started with phones, which were great compared to what we have. But now what I have is amazing. It's on my computer. I press a button. I choose the language I need, and I've not yet come across a language they were not able to accommodate me with. And up on the screen pops up base, and this is my interpreter. And I can see my interpreter can see me and can see the patient, and we can have a conversation where the interpreter is going to translate real time what my patient is trying to communicate with me, and it's just been amazing. Primary or primacy of the individual in healthcare. So predicting an individual's patient's character merely on the basis of common cultural traits isn't appropriate. Cultural attitudes may constrain professional behavior and confuse the context. Each individual is unique, so we cannot pigeonhole patients who have a particular sub-context that we identify with culture and believe that they share all of those constructs, because it just doesn't happen that way. They are raised in different situations and environments. They may have been exposed to different things. Think about our belief system. It may have evolved throughout the years. So, as a child, we have a certain belief system. May it be religious or ethics. And as we grow and we're exposed to the outside world, and as we mature, we morph those belief systems into a new construct. So we may look a certain way on the outside, but that doesn't mean that we have a set belief system. And we need to recognize that. Disease is shaped by illness, and illness is shaped by the totality of the patient's experience. So some people may believe that a certain illness is devastating, where another may say, okay, let's do what we've got to do to get this fixed. So it is the patient dealing and reacting to a disease process that is individualized. So we have to consider the substance of illness, the biologic, emotional, and cultural aspects, or else we are falling short and we are not providing complete care. In how we communicate to our patients, covers everything. We communicate with our patients by speech, eye contact, touch, and silence. Our body language speaks volumes. And our patients also are communicating to us through these constructs. There are variations in communications, and they vary within groups. Some people may be very quiet. They may not be great sharers, where others are very sharing. Some may not want to look you in the eye. Others, by the time the visit's over, you feel as though they're a relative. So it varies greatly. The cultural and physical characteristics of patients and practitioner can definitely influence communication. So it's important that when we are communicating with our patients that we display an open environment. So we're facing the patient. We're in a relaxed manner, eye contact. I always have a pen and paper with me, and I'll write down things. And I have a script that I guess I'd say I would use every patient that comes in the door. I say to them, "Hi, my name's April. I'm the nurse practitioner that's going to be working with you today. How can I help?" And I lead them to the exam table, or I really often set them in the chair first, and then I sit in a chair across from them, and we have a conversation before I lead them to the table. That's what I've been doing a lot more lately, and it's been working really well. The patient's view of health and illness and approach to cure are shaped by their culture and faith belief. An imbalance can result in illness. Faith-based or naturalistic beliefs can conflict with treatment options. And many cultures believe in herbs, rituals, religious artifacts. I try to, since I work in acute care, I don't deal with this a lot. I do deal a lot with the use of herbs and holistic medicine. It's important as a practitioner to get to learn about treatments. I've learned a lot about homeopathic medicine so that I can be a resource to my patients, and I will advise them. For me, I believe that Using the evidence-based research and treatment plans that are backed in science is best. But if it's appropriate to pair your homeopathic medications with my conventional medications, let's do it. Let's go for it. So, and then different rituals and religious artifacts, definitely incorporate those things. It's going to give the patient a sense of peace and a sense of equilibrium. If they don't have that, it's going to impair their ability to heal. Family structure and the social organizations to which a patient belongs are among many imprinting and constraining cultural forces in a patient's life. So one type of already known behavior can predict another type of behavior. A patient can belong to lots of different groups, and attitudes and behaviors of one group can modify and impact the cultural values of the other groups to which the person belongs. So they may behave in a specific manner when they are with one of the cultural groups of which they identify, and then when they're in a different cultural group of which they identify, they may behave differently. So we need to realize that patients may not belong to just one cultural group. They may have multiple different cultural identities, and that's okay. Diet and nutritional practices. We need to understand the beliefs and practices related to food, as well as the social significance of food, play a vital role in everyday life. And we will see this in patients who are Orthodox Jews, Muslims, Chinese, herbal home and natural therapies, complementary and alternative therapies. Orthodox Jews, they have certain days where they fast. They have the Sabbath, where they will have their where they don't use electricity from sundown to sunset over that period of time. Muslims will not eat pork. Chinese people will embrace a lot of different alternative therapies using lots of herbals, acupuncture, cupping. And it's interesting. I try to be open, right? But many years ago, my physician advised me that he would like me to try acupuncture. And I wasn't a big believer, but I said, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. I'll give it a try. And when I went to the acupuncturist, I was very forthright and I said, I have to tell you, I'm not a big believer. Oop, they're doing construction here, so I'm sorry. I'm not a big believer in acupuncture, but I do believe in my doctor and he's a big believer in it, so I'm going to give it an opportunity. Well, wouldn't you know, after a few treatments, there was significant improvement in my symptoms, and I had to admit there may be some relevance to the practice of acupuncture. So it definitely changed my view on acupuncture. This was a long time ago.